Unit 1. Listening. Exercise 2.
Shaking hands, giving high fives, bumping fists or elbows, kissing cheeks, and many other different gestures. They're all part of the fascinating world of the social etiquette of greeting one another. Today, to help us learn more about these social customs, psychologist Paula Wilson is with us. Paula, let's talk about the handshake first. It's a gesture that is so common in Western culture, and it's been around for a very long time, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, for thousands of years, really. Perhaps the earliest representation of a handshake comes in a 9th century image showing a king of Assyria shaking hands with a Babylonian ruler, and it seems to represent some sort of partnership between them.
The popular theory is that the handshake was originally a sign of peace, isn't it? Why is that?
Well, hundreds of years ago, people would carry weapons with them at all times, particularly swords and knives. So, by offering your right hand, you were showing that you weren't holding a weapon and that you weren't going to attack. Some people think that by shaking hands up and down, not just touching hands, they were checking that the other person didn't have a knife or dagger hidden up their shirt sleeve. I'm not so sure about that, though.
But people in this part of the world haven't always greeted each other with a handshake, have they?
No, for a while it went out of fashion. People used to greet each other in different ways. For instance, bowing their heads slightly, or by touching or tipping their hats. But some people think it was a religious group called the Quakers who made the handshake popular again in the 17th century. For them, it was a sign that all people were equal. Then handshakes became common between politicians and business people as a sign of trust. So it's a formal, professional gesture, not just a question of saying hello. Business people will usually shake hands at the start of meetings and to close deals. Although you do meet people who are always giving really aggressive handshakes as a way of trying to get the other person under their control.
That brings us to one of the problems with the handshake, doesn't it? Hygiene.
Well, yes. Research from the University of Colorado at Boulder suggests we carry on average about 150 different species of bacteria on our hands. And it seems we shake hands around 15,000 times in our lifetime.
I suppose the high five and fist bump are safer then?
Yes. Some people have calculated that they probably cut the amount of bacteria by half. One story suggests that the person who started bumping fists was American baseball player Stan Musial in the 1950s and 60s. He was convinced that he was always catching colds because of shaking hands with so many fans. Although there are other people who say that the fist bump came from boxers who couldn't shake hands because of their boxing gloves, or even motorbike riders for a similar reason.
And of course today, when there are occasionally very serious health risks around the world, we now see people doing the elbow bump to say hello, which is probably safer.
That's right. In fact, in 2006, the World Health Organization recommended people do elbow bumps instead of shaking hands.
So, do you think the handshake will disappear one day?
Good question. We're used to shaking hands, and it's such a big part of our Western culture that I find it hard to imagine.
Yes, we mustn't forget that not all cultures use the handshake, do they?
No, there are many different ways of saying hello. In India, for example, people just put their own hands together. That's the greeting known as Namaste. In Thailand, people normally press their palms together and bow their heads slightly. Your thumbs should touch your chin and your fingers touch your forehead. It's called the Y, W-A-I.
There's an interesting gesture in Tibet, isn't there?
Yes, there's a polite greeting where people put their hands together and place them in front of their chest, and they also stick out their tongue. Apparently, a long time ago, they used to do this to prove that they weren't the reincarnation of a cruel king from the 9th century who had a black tongue.
I see. And then we have kissing, pressing noses, all sorts of different greetings. Paula, thanks for explaining just some of them for us today.